Eric P. Bishop, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me on, Terrence. I'm glad to be here.
Have I ever asked you what the P stands for?
Um, I don't know if you have or not.
Wh-
So,
What does the P stand for?
Paul. So, I don't know if my mom was a big Beatles fan or a born again Christian and or Catholic or whatever, for an apostle. One of the two got me Paul. So this actually a quick story behind that. It's funny you bring this up to start with it because I probably have talked about it before, but maybe not in other podcasts or my own. Um, when I was first starting to write in 2014. I thought this is going to be a big deal. And then I realized what the publishing industry is like and how hard it is. And I realized, okay, this isn't. So I started
The cold
having
water just
uh,
instantly thrown.
ice cold water with like, I think razor blades in it, maybe. I'm not sure. Something very sharp that cut me to the core and made me realize, okay, let's keep the finance job and let's have fun writing in the evenings and weekends because I might want to eat, and I like filet. I don't like hamburger helper. I like filet. I like the good stuff in life. I'm not stupid. Mama didn't, whether she was Catholic or a Beatles fan. Mama didn't raise no fool. So, no. So I was getting into it and starting to do a website and all that. And
Mhm.
first I said, let me get ericbishop.com. Ericbishop.com was taken. And I'm like, there's others? I cannot believe this. Um, sure enough, there are others. And one of them was a writer. I think he was out in Wyoming or somewhere out in the Western
Hmm.
area. And he had Eric Bishop. He had books out there. I think one Western style book out there.
Mhm.
And I probably still could have done Eric Bishop and it wouldn't have had problems because now that I've been writing for years, there's multiple authors out there with the same names.
Okay, I desperately want you to find this writer and interview him on the
On my
Tale of Two Scribes podcast. Eric Bishop interviews Eric Bishop.
I have never thought about that, and that's brilliant. So that is, I need to write that down. I'll remember that one. So that would be a brilliant idea. Eric Bishop interviewing Eric Bishop. He probably will sell more books out of that interview than I will. So I mean, that's life. Um, no, so at that point, it's like, okay, well, how do I brand myself? And even how
Mhm.
do I get my website? I don't want it to be Eric Bishop author. It's like
Yeah.
so. Ironically, I'd always used my middle initial like back in the day. So I'm dating it for anyone watching the episode that's younger. We used to have these things called checks, and that's how we would. I was born in 1976. I got a checkbook. I still have it. I don't use it now, but I still have a checkbook sitting somewhere in the office. Um, so I always used P anyways, just because I don't know, because I did. So I
Mhm.
was used to always using it, and I said, well, I'll just go with it now, 10 years into the process, do I like everything being Eric P. Bishop? Probably not. But I went with it. I branded it, and at this point, it's like it's on all my book covers, so we'll
Yeah.
we'll keep sticking with it. And it lets me talk about either the Apostle or the Beetle. So
It's a great segue. Actually,
absolutely.
that's one of the things I've been thinking about recently is when you see different authors' names. Like someone had made the joke about George R. R. Martin. Obviously,
Mhm.
like to a certain extent, there's probably a degree where the person that was his marketing agent or the publisher was like, okay, we have an opportunity to piggyback on J.R.R. Tolkien being like the
Yeah.
most famous name in fantasy,
Yep.
and this will work. But I always find it fascinating to see how authors do choose to represent their names. For
Right.
example, we just did an interview with the guys from the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast, and
Uh-huh.
Luke Goodish, he does LS Goodish on his books,
Mhm.
even though like in common conversation, he's Luke. So
Right.
I just always find it fascinating because then like I have two middle names. I did not think about doing Terrence D.A. Lehue on my book unless I wrote legal thrillers, in which case I should have done D.A. Lehue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know. I can't speak that I understand the convention of what people go with. I don't think there is a convention. I think it's kind of not, I don't
Hmm.
think it's random.
Hmm.
So I think because I've spoken with some female authors that don't use their first name. They'll
Hmm.
use an initial. And I think it's that because I think the mindset is, well, and it's not a correct mindset, but I think some of the mindset is, well, writing's a man's world, publishing is
Hmm.
man's. Like, no, more women buy books than men.
Yeah.
But I think there is still maybe leftover just jumbled in people's heads where if you see like, Erica P. Bishop, be like, Erica, really? Can she write political
Hmm.
thrillers? I think there's still so she would do an E.P. Bishop, or something like that. I think there's still that stigma that's there, which I think is false.
Hmm.
Because I don't ever look at a book cover and look at a name and go, oh, her name's Sandra. I'm not going to buy that book, or it doesn't in my brain ever go that direction.
No, and like the opposite thing still exists too with romance fiction. Friend of the show, Roland Hume, writes romance novels, and he writes them under a pen name Scarlett Simone,
Okay.
and oh no, Simone
Yeah.
Scarlett, and that's because you put his name on it as a dude, it's less likely for housewife sitting at home clicking on Kindle to
Yep.
grab it. So like it's fair. It is part of the
It
just
is.
playing the perception and the marketing game.
Yep. I think when I start my romance novel next year, I'm going to just name it Erica Paul. Erica Paul at the bottom, and we'll just
Erica Paul.
Erica Paul. We'll put an
Okay.
A on and drop the last name, and boom.
I have to ask though, like what would an Erica Paul romance novel look like? Have you actually thought about this ever? What would your
No,
romance novel be?
no, no. It would probably involve it would break the genre a little bit because Erica would get probably really pissed at Eric and she'd kill him at some point in the story or do something twisted
It turns into
or
Gone Girl about 50% of the way through the book.
yeah, I was actually so ironically enough, I was writing last night and I was writing for my next my summer release. And so I got to this chapter where Merci, my female assassin, and Marcus, her significant other, are kind of, romance type chapter. And
Hmm.
I'm trying to walk a fine line because I also when I read something that's done like dirty, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
to me it doesn't work that well. I don't get
Yeah.
like, wow, this is great. Normally I'm like, you can't do that. I mean, this is what is this? You dating a Russian gymnast or something? It's like that's not possible. That's not. So I always walk a fine line. So I'll make
Hmm.
innuendos at times about characters
Hmm.
because that's part of humanity. That's part of life.
Hmm.
There's obviously a sexual attraction and physical intimacy and all that. I mean, that's why most guys get up in the morning,
Yeah.
honestly. They don't get up
Yeah.
to go to work and go bring a paycheck back and go, here you go, here's the groceries. They're giving that paycheck over, so they'd be like, I was good. I was good.
Tragically realistic.
Tragically, oh, completely realistic. So I walk that fine line when I walk it. Plus, I also know one day my kids don't read my books now, but one day my
Hmm.
kids will read my books, and I
Yeah.
don't want my kids to be like, Dad, what in the world were you putting in here? That's just wrong. And I'd say my mom reads my books, but anytime I've wrote in something that's like borderline, and I'm like, Mom, how was it? She's like, Oh, it was good. I'm like, Did you
Hmm.
read it? Or was it really okay? So, um, it's not my thing. Romance, I don't know. I don't think it's the mystery genre I'll end up in at the end of this career. So, but
Hmm. Well, I
um,
do think to your point though, it is interesting where there are some things. So like I really have enjoyed there's a series called P.I. Beckett novels by an author
okay.
named Dominic Piper. And he definitely is far more sensual in his language in
Hmm.
a mystery genre with a detective. And so it pushes the envelope on like a James Bond type thing.
Yeah,
But like I read that and I'm like, okay, this is like I can see where this is very much his distinctive style. I can't write that way. I
right.
100% cannot write that way. The I when I wrote One Man's Treasure, I have my book here because obviously
You
why not?
should
But
promote
the
your book.
promote my book all the time. Why else have a podcast?
Why am
The
I on this podcast?
the
I mean,
the
joking.
premise of well, of course. But I tried pushing the edge on what I was comfortable-ish writing. I found, it's very much a PG-13. And I am
Yeah,
okay with that because I don't
right.
think that stories really need to be more than that unless you
Yeah,
are very specifically writing to that point. And it's easier
correct.
to write love stuff wrong.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I read a book called How to Write Like Leo Tolstoy, and the
Okay.
author said that there's actually like an award given to like the worst sex scene written every year at like some book awards contest. And I'm like, that
That's
is
hilarious.
amazing. And there's so many contestants that are like genuine nominations because
Right,
it's easy to write it garbage.
right. Too funny.
And it's amazing
I
we got to this point in
we're
complete sidetrack.
we're we're breaking the rules on this one. Well, the final point we can put this one to bed is I think, and
No
this is
pun
again
intended.
every time I speak, I'm speaking for myself, not for everyone in general. But if you leave stuff to the mystery, if you give
Hmm.
all the details, I think that's why probably porn has desensitized, a
Hmm.
whole entire generation because, you know, back years ago, there was always a little mystery of what did she look like? What really happened when the door closed? And I
Hmm.
think that makes the readers, and I think it engages readers more because their
Hmm.
imagination can kick in. Okay, they opened the door, they whatever, they said silly things to each other and the door closed. Well, what happened in there? She
Hmm.
came out the next morning smiling. She didn't come out the next morning running out saying, "You're horrible," or "You're this." So I think that element of kind of leaving stuff in readers' imagination is more powerful than giving
Hmm.
every detail of what occurred during any encounter. That's of that nature.
Hmm.
Maybe in a murder encounter, it helps to go into details, but I don't even that. I think sometimes it's good to kind of leave a little mystery.
And actually, I do want to use that as a segue into talking about Babylon Will Rise.
Sure.
Is there is a moment where the question becomes, how did they get the nukes? And you do a great job of just going, hey, you know what? This was a past decision that we had zero involvement with.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter how it happened. This is the situation we're in. And I love that you don't spend a lot of time trying to exposition why the premise occurred, simply that this is actually the way that things are.
Yeah. Yeah. It was intentional. I learned a lot. So, and I've mentioned it before that, on my Mount Rushmore, one of them is Tom Clancy.
Hmm.
Um, and every now and then someone will say, "Oh, it feels like a Clancy novel," which is a huge compliment.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I don't know if I agree with them because
Your
what
books are a
I'll
whole
do
lot
in a
shorter, and I thank you for
yes.
that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And so what I'll do in a page, Tom Clancy would have done in 10 pages.
Hmm.
And his 10 pages would hold you. And hopefully my one page will hold you. But he gives so much detail. And I will say, as I've gotten older, I don't enjoy that as much.
Hmm.
So like when I'm reading a book, I I'll admit it. I love reading books, but if it's not catching me or if it hits a slow spot, I have
Hmm.
no problem going, oh
Hmm.
yeah, this is interesting again. I'll skip a page, a chapter.
Hmm.
A few times I've read the first chapter and the last chapter, and I've been like, hey, good job. Nice book. I didn't read the middle of it. No clue what happened in the middle. Part of that is because as a writer, as now a
Hmm.
publisher, all that stuff, I do try to stick to the mantra with books of if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything.
Yeah.
Going out there and leaving a one-star review, it's like
Hmm.
it's like the person that, orders a cup of coffee and it's not piping hot. It's good, but it's not piping hot. It says, "Bring me back another cup of coffee. This is lousy." It's like, it's a freaking cup of coffee. Just drink it and shut up.
Hmm. The I With the podcast, I have started implementing the rule that I'll read the first two chapters
Mhm.
of a book when someone's like, "Hey, I'd like to be on the show." And
Yeah.
if I can't make it through, then I know it's just not going to work because life is too short otherwise. There are
Yeah.
not that many books that I take in that I don't finish,
Hmm.
but a lot of them now I'm just getting more picky on. My rule
Yeah.
this year, last year I read 101 books. This year I'm going to read 52 because I need to read less, write
Yeah.
more.
Right.
And that means there's going to be way more books I just don't read that I
Yes.
pick and set to the side.
I don't admit to what my book number is, and it's not one or two.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely read more than that. But of complete books, man, it's not a massive number anymore. And years ago before I wrote, oh yeah, I mean, I had a list of authors I wrote.
Hmm.
I read every book that, even if I didn't buy them, I go to the library and get that new book as soon as I could get the copy.
Hmm.
Um, Almost all those authors now, I haven't read their books in 7 or 8 years, and it's not a knock at them.
It's a time thing, quite
It's a time
frankly.
thing. Yeah, it's a time thing. Also, I had, and I won't name who because they're uber successful, sell many more books than me, and they have adoring fans. But a big name author I read years ago, I got like I finished that book. So I finished one of their books, and it was built up to be this big.
Hmm.
If I say it, it'll give away who the author was. But it was built up to be this big thing for this organization. And
Yeah,
as I read it, it fell flat. I was like,
yeah.
man, that was such a letdown. And I got their next book, and I read the first chapter, and I was just like, not feeling it anymore. And that was
Hmm.
probably 2015 or 17, somewhere in
Hmm.
that range there. So you're talking now 8, 9 years maybe that they've come out with more books and they're selling a lot of books. And God bless them. I have no qualms with them. I'm just not going to probably pick up another book ever again for them. There's so many books to read, not on my
Hmm.
list anymore.
And that's okay. But the good
It
news
is.
is Babylon Will Rise, I think, was actually my first book that I finished this year. So, like, thank you. It
Thank
was
you.
phenomenal. I really
Thank
did
you.
enjoy it. I think it's your best book so far, quite frankly.
That's what I've heard, and I hoped so, and I always believe so. But also, my favorite book right now is Supreme Justice that I'm working on next
Yeah.
summer. So you always, it's like you're
Your
cheating
heart's in the
on
right
your books.
place.
What's that?
Your heart is in the right place. It's always needs to be that next thing.
Well, and I think that's how you stay successful in
Hmm.
this business and keep writing good books is
Hmm.
if you're always looking back on, oh man, that first one or that second one or that third one, that's where I got it. There's nothing per se wrong with that because maybe that is the one that you did really well and then you fell off the cliff and you're trying to get back to that.
Hmm.
Completely respect that. But I think it's really hard to make it doing this type of work if you're always looking back at something else and you're not focused on what you're currently doing and loving
Hmm.
it. And I mean, I went to sleep happy with the chapter I wrote last night. I was excited to get up this morning. I didn't write this
Hmm.
morning because of the ice. I went for a walk to see what the roads
Hmm.
look like so I could tell my
Which
son who's supposed to work.
that's also a legitimate thing in writing, is taking just a good walk, I think is one of the most underrated. Walk and exercise are the two most, and you've been hitting the gym more. Like, I don't know how we didn't
Yeah.
talk about this more in the last interview, but you've been posting at like Plant Fitness and stuff, just
Yeah.
getting your workout in. I remember when we talked to Frank Bill, that he was working on a small project where he wants to write a book
Mhm.
about the relationship between exercise and fitness and writing, and
Okay.
just like the history of how different writers have had their own physical regimen, because
Yeah.
there is such an interplay between the body moving
Yep.
and creativity.
So divert on that subject real quick. I think a
Yeah.
lot of that comes down because I do a lot of my thinking for stories on where I want to go on either a trail or a mountain while I'm
Hmm.
hiking or
Hmm.
showers. Showers
Hmm.
are great if you're
Yes.
stuck, go stand in the shower for 10 minutes and you're probably like,
Hmm.
aha. Um, that normally works. But to the exercise point, I think what it is, and it's for me, I had gotten a spot where I just put on extra weight, and this was even a couple
Hmm.
of years ago. So last year I was like, that's it. I'm tired of being middle aged and overweight,
Hmm.
not feeling good, basically.
Yeah.
That affects your ability to be able to write or
Hmm.
whatever your job is, your day job or interact with your kids or your spouse. So I went really clean for the first, so this is last year, 2024. I went carnivore January, part of February, then I still went
Hmm.
clean up until summer. And then I just like, and I dropped like 27 pounds.
Congratulations.
Well, no. You didn't get into the story. You get hold
Oh,
on.
okay.
This is a horror at the end. So then I get to the midsummer and I'm like, I've been a good boy. I've been working out good. I'm dropping the weight. I'm just like, I can have a treat more often. I earned it. I deserved it. And that became. I went on vacation, which was a bad
Oh,
thing.
yeah, that doesn't.
I'll get back on after the vacation. And then I'm
Mhm.
like, man, I'm enjoying this food. And then I had another trip to California coming up, and I'm like, I can't fast while I'm in California, man. I'm going to be at Yosemite hiking and working on day job while I'm out there. And then from there, I went to Europe, and
Hmm.
there was no way I wasn't going to Dublin
Yeah,
and having
no.
quite a few Guinness.
I
So
think that
yeah,
they throw you out of Ireland if you don't.
oh yeah, oh yeah. They don't let you, you have to actually show your Guinness tab on the way in and out. Like how many Guinness did you purchase? If you didn't purchase enough, they send you back to the bar,
Most
which
unique
is like
customs
800 of them
process
in Dublin.
ever.
Exactly. No, but I pretty much put most of the weight on,
Oh.
if not all, back on by the end of the year, and which completely pissed me off. Again, that's just my own laziness, my own giving into, stupid things that I don't need to be eating or drinking anyways. And so I said, okay, that's it. You were wrong. And so I'm back to like I'm strict carnivore. I'm not gonna do I don't carnivore I go back and forth on. I
Hmm.
think it's very good for a period of time to drop
Yes.
weight and also
Hmm.
take away like inflammation. I mean,
Yeah.
I, I noticed within a week of doing it, each time I've done it,
Hmm.
I sleep better. I don't have
Hmm.
as much, aches and pains. So it has a quick result for me at least. And then I dropped weight quickly on it for about a
Hmm.
month and a half. But
Protein is
then
highly satiating. So if you're
yeah,
basically just eating meat, you will eat
yes,
less calories and you will just generally feel better because you're consuming more protein. The average
right.
person does not consume enough protein.
No. Now I do dirty carnivore. So I will do some spices, no,
Hmm.
nothing with sugar in it,
Yeah, that's
nothing with
still good
carbs or
though.
whatever. And I'll do dairy. And
Hmm.
some
Yeah.
dairy, some days I do more dairy than others. Some I go very
Hmm.
light, some I'll do more. Like one thing that I noticed, like I got a cup of coffee before we sat down this morning is I used to drink 2, 3 cups of coffee and I
Hmm.
like my coffee sweet and creamy, basically. Well, there's no more sweet because the sugar's out of the system for a while. But I would still pour a lot of cream in. So what I noticed in the last couple months before I went back to doing the diet was that how much cream am I actually consuming?
Valid.
Um, Lot. So what I found was probably each cup I was probably pouring was probably 150 calories in cream.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
We have three of those a day. You're almost looking
Yeah.
at 500 calories. Well, that's about a third of what I want to consume if I'm trying to lose
Yes.
weight, stay in a caloric deficit. So I
Uh-huh.
get one cup now in the morning. I have it right here. I haven't even drank much of it. It's sitting here. And it gets about a quarter cup, which is about 100 calories. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I just tell myself, you savor every sip because that's all
Mm-hmm.
you're getting because you were a jerk last year and put all that weight back on. And now you have to take it back off. So
Well,
pay
hey,
the piper.
I'm impressed because like that's accepting that what happened happened and moving
Yeah,
forward is really the thing to do. Besides
right.
that, you did it once, you're gonna do it again.
Yeah.
And I was just impressed when I saw your regular showing up to the gym, doing the things. So thank you.
And thank you. Well, thank you for the compliment. Part of that too is the gym. I was actually explaining this to someone the other day who was doing like a home gym, and I said, and I've got weights sitting there like 5 feet away from me. And I did use them yesterday actually, but not heavy, not much. Home gyms to me, I'm like, got a chapter right. My kids aren't
Hmm.
here. Oh, you know what? James
Yeah.
Bond's on. Whatever.
Yeah.
So I will find an excuse not to touch those weights. If I
Hmm.
drive 15 minutes out to Planet Fitness, well, I
Hmm.
just drove half-hour round trip. I'm gonna bust my butt for an hour. And also the other thing is I've gone there, I've sat in the parking lot and been like, I don't feel it tonight. I should leave. I gotta go to the grocery
Hmm.
store. And I've made myself walk in there. An
Hmm.
hour later when I come out, I go, man, I feel like $1 million. Why did you why and it happens all the time, so it's not I don't learn
Hmm.
my lesson. But if I drive there, I'm working out. I'm not wasting the gas. So
Not in this economy.
no, what are you talking about? Everything's cheap, you know?
Um, but what's not cheap is Babylon Will Rise. Tell me, when did the book start? What was that process like for you? This is the second installment of the Omega
Mhm.
Group. Can you give just the audience a brief recap on who the Omega Group is?
Yeah, so well, I'll take you back real quick first. So the Omega Group really started in 2014 when I wrote my first novel.
Hmm.
So I had this concept and I wrote this book and it featured Troy Evans, who
Hmm.
was my kind of protagonist and had, of course, a bunch of other guys because
I
the
like
Omega
he
Group
also has a normal name. Like, just as a general rule of thumb, it's one of those things where it's his name isn't like Tactical Mick Amazing. It's Troy Evans. Like, it is very straightforward, direct. I actually like the fact that all the characters generally have good, solid names and nicknames.
Yeah, no, I spent a lot of time, thank you, but I spent a lot of time coming up with them. And what I wanted to do when I crafted that character, because at the time I was reading, well, was Vince Flynn alive? No, Vince might have been passed away by the time then. Or right about that time, Vince died. I was used to reading Mitch Rapp and other
Hmm.
characters like that genre, and still, I mean, like favorite characters of all time, absolutely.
Hmm.
But what I didn't want to do was have yet another character that you could shoot, throw out of a plane, fall out of a building, John Wick all the time, and boom, they're back the next chapter. Yeah, they're beat up
Hmm.
and bruised, but man, they're still able to go jump out of the
Hmm.
C-130 again. No, I want more of an average, normal guy, but he's done some extraordinary things. But
Hmm.
it's paced. It's not like constant. It's not
Hmm.
in your face. And so that's when I started creating Troy and the Omega Group. So that was 2014. I actually wrote a book with Troy. The second book I wrote was actually a backstory on Troy, which I think is going to come out in a year. I think I'm going to put that
Okay.
one out. I'm going to fix it, but I
Hmm.
want to give his backstory of how he became that character. So it'll probably end up the third book in the Omega Group series. And then I wrote another one, and I had seven planned. And that's when kind of the wheels fell off, and I was not getting a publisher, not getting an agent.
Hmm.
So I decided, okay, let's kind of pivot. I want to grow. I want to become a better writer, and that's where I dreamed up the idea for the Body Man and started writing
Hmm.
those books. When I started the publishing company, I'm like, man, I've got these books and stories I've done that are sitting on a hard drive. Are they redeemable? Can I fix them
Hmm.
and make them publishable? And that's when Ransom Daughter, which started as a short novella, I beefed it up a little bit and put it out as a novella, but a little more meat to it. And then Babylon Will Rise was not called Babylon Will Rise back then. It was actually a short. It was a novella, but it was a larger novella, but it wasn't yet a
Hmm.
novel. And it was actually called Project Nebuchadnezzar. was the name.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I liked it. And I liked the fact that because it had to deal with Saddam and the nukes,
Yeah.
and Saddam thought himself, he said he was the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar.
Hmm.
For anyone that doesn't know, Saddam Hussein
Hmm.
was nutcase. Of course, we put him in power, but he was a nutcase.
Can I just say I also love the fact that being a kid that grew up in was born in 95, I like remember some of my earliest memories of the news and TV was like Saddam Hussein and 9/11, etc. So
Yeah,
there's this weird nostalgia I actually had reading about like the backstory in
interesting.
Babylon Will Rise. I'm like I feel conflicted. I don't know what to do with this.
Well, it was intentional. So I wrote that some of that stuff there, and I wanted to also mix like reality and fiction, and because it some of it's true, some of it's not. So in the story, so in Babylon, so it became to finish that statement, why it became so stop being Project Nebuchadnezzar is that's a horrible,
It's horrible for
horrible
sure
thing on
typing.
that would be really bad on this cover. Project Nebuchadnezzar. And people be like, how the heck do you spell the second word? I'm like, Nebuchadnezzar. I'm like, wait, no, that might not be right. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just like Old Testament, Saddam, a lot of people are dead. Just, whatever.
Side con on that story, David Darling, the original title for oh, why am I blanking on the name? His latest book that's
The Egyptian
fantastic.
Enigma.
The Egyptian Enigma, it had a different, it was like the Anubis Ankh or something like that. And he was like,
Yes.
"Oh, I realized that the typing is a thing. And yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you got to be really careful. So as I was kind of taking that story last year and kind of retooling it, I
Mhm.
added probably 35,000 words. So I beefed it up. I put in a lot
Hmm.
more stuff. I put in a lot more characters. Charlie didn't exist. That character didn't exist. So I
Okay.
created Charlie.
Hmm.
I actually, when I first started writing Charlie, I kept calling her Sam. And I'm like, wait, Sam's the a body man apprentice. Why do you have Sam? I'm like, oh, dude, I need a character list here. I got to keep these names straight.
You
Well,
need to
because I was
create the
wanting to.
Bible, the series Bible.
I do need one, and I've started one since last fall. Actually, I have
Good
started.
job.
It's an Excel. It's an Excel
Hmm.
version of the Bible, but
Hmm.
um. So then I kind of was playing with, well, what I want to throw the guys off in the beginning part when she's introduced. So I want them to think it's a dude. So
Hmm.
what name do I want to go? So I kind of wrote a list of names out, and I was like, you know. I think Charlie would work. I said, Charlie is because I've known some actually females with the name Charlie. Um, and of course, she was named Charlene, but
Hmm.
called Charlie. But it throws the guys for a loop because they think, hey, where's this Captain Charlie? No,
Looks
Captain
like a
Charlie.
cool dude.
It's a smoke show, man. But she will kick your rear end and shoot you between
Hmm.
the eyes without if you're a bad guy, without question. So,
Or the
so that's how
Jackal.
it kind of. So it started as as a novella, and then it morphed into let's beef this
Hmm.
up, let's change the name, and then yeah, the story behind it is, which is part of this is true. So. Iran and Iraq had a war. Most people do not remember that, especially if they're, in their 30s or probably even 40s, or younger. And Iraq really did use chemical weapons on Iran. So as I was kind of researching that and stuff, is like, so what if Iran actually got their hands on a nuke somehow? Russia, because Russia and Iran have been tied together for years. And I'm like, what would happen? So Iraq would beg the United States for a counter nuke to say, yo, we got one too. Don't push that button because we're going to turn you into a parking lot as well. So then I just came up with maybe it's fake, maybe it's not the imaginary backstory of, okay, maybe Bush gave two nukes, not just one. Um, or Reagan, sorry.
Hmm.
And then under Bush, everything was happening as well. And then Bush decides to go after him. So, and when they go during the Operation Iraqi Freedom, they go first task Bush 43 does is retrieve those nukes. We haven't seen
Hmm.
them in a little while, and we don't know what's going to happen. We have all these terrorist groups, so we don't want them to fall into that hand. We can control Saddam, and we got him, but we want those nukes. Nukes are gone. So
Hmm.
then the story becomes what happened to the nukes? How do we find them? And when one of them hits the black market, we have to retrieve them. And we can't go send the entire military to attack this country. We need to do this very, very cleverly. And best way to do that is to take an attractive army officer
Hmm.
and a good-looking army man and have them, break into the place or get into the place, not break in. They do some breaking in the course of the story and find out where this nuke is and let's get it. So.
That was one of my favorite scenes that you wrote, by the way, is the whole arms dealer set piece was fantastic. You could
Thank
see
you.
it immediately. Also, Charlie was such a highlight. It's
Yeah,
amazing how a supporting character can just, especially one that's added in the story, can just pull everything together sometimes. And
right.
she's phenomenal.
Well, she's kind of the yin to the guy's yang.
Hmm.
So these guys have been working together in my mind for many years. They know each other well. They bust chops like crazy, and they're guys. So obviously, a pretty woman comes in the picture. They'll
Hmm.
hand over their paycheck. They'll do whatever.
I You walk such a beautiful line in the story of letting the characters kind of like example, the Jackal, no surprise, is the character
Oh
that
yeah,
has the most to say, and they
right.
do a good job of putting him in his place. So
Yes,
you do a good job of illustrating this is how the world is, and also no, it isn't always right to do this. And
right.
that's a really hard balance to write, especially in fiction in today's day and age.
Yeah. It's it's tricky to write nowadays because you've got this whole subset of society or set
Hmm.
of society that is very like woke, very like you
Hmm.
got to be careful what you say. You can't say anything offensive. You better we were joking off camera before we came on. You better have an NDA, you better have something signed to say you can touch my shoulder or whatever.
Hmm.
Well, that's something that so much of the population grew up, where that wasn't the norm. So
Hmm.
how do you write about stuff like that? How does a guy, even today, nowadays, how does a guy hit on a woman
Hmm.
without causing this major scene of how dare you hit on me? It's like, well, that's kind of for the course of human history, how men and women got together. A lot of times a man made an attempt to woo a
Hmm.
woman. Well,
A
how did he
bid
do
for
that?
attention. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Guys are. I've been married, obviously, and I've had many female friends over the years, just in friend capacity. And it's like guys are really simple. Everyone
Hmm.
tries to make guys really complicated, and some guys are extremely complicated. But as a general rule, and generalization is bad, but as a general rule, guys are fairly simple.
Hmm.
If you can help out in several areas and make sure he's happy, got a belly full, he's pretty much gonna just
Hmm.
normally be loyal, normally work hard, he's gonna do his thing. But there has to be it's a symbiotic relationship where you have to be taking care of each other's needs.
Yeah.
So hopefully my books make a fair representation of that and make you laugh at the same time.
Hmm.
So
It was very entertaining. I enjoyed it thoroughly. The continued saga of these characters in the Omega group was really just a delight and a joy to read.
thank you. Yeah, it was fun writing them. I definitely don't think the military thrillers have as much of the market, and so the political thrillers and thrillers in general have a bigger slice of the sales market. So
Hmm.
from a publishing standpoint, it makes me want
Hmm.
to focus more on the Bodyman series than the
Yeah.
Omega Group series. But I love those characters enough that I'm going to try for at least indefinite period of time of paralleling back and forth between doing a Omega
Hmm.
Group book, doing a Bodyman series, and even if the
Hmm.
Bodyman series does better than the Omega Group series, I still like, in my head, those are real characters. And in my head, when I'm out and I say something stupid, that's probably the Jackal talking. Oh, and he might be right with what he's saying. He just probably shouldn't
Hmm.
say it in a big group of, women. Probably a dumb thing to say. But no, it's just again, it's kind of a way you let out your creativity, and I enjoy those characters, and I enjoy the growth of it. I tried to put, especially in this one, there was elements of faith built into this.
Hmm.
Not preachy,
I did think
'cause
that that was a really interesting. I was gonna say segment. That's a really interesting recurring thematic element that shows up in Babylon Will Rise.
yeah, so well, and there's, I grew up in a religious home, college, all that.
Middle name's Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I never want to be preachy because
Hmm.
what I put in the books isn't necessarily 100% what I believe.
Hmm.
But there's elements of what I believe in those books, and there's
Hmm.
elements of stuff in those books I don't believe.
Yeah.
Because I want people to find faith. I want them to go on a journey, and I would like them to come to the same conclusion I've come to, but that's also not reality. And you
Yeah.
also can't browbeat someone into what they believe.
Hmm.
But I know enough people in this life to know that faith is an important component of many people's lives.
Hmm.
So because I'm writing characters that I want to, and I in some ways believe are real, at least imaginary real characters, is kind of a not a true not a true combination of words, but in your head as you're a writer, they're kind of real.
Hmm.
You created these characters. Well, they struggle with faith, and they
Yeah.
struggle, especially if you're in that type of, because I've had friends that have served, full careers in the military. And you wonder, when is it, and again, this is a little bit of a deeper dive, I guess, but when is it okay to take a human life?
Yeah.
So if you're someone that's very firm in your religious faith that murder is
Hmm.
wrong and you cannot take a life, um, is it okay to be out on a battlefield and maybe indiscriminately shooting at people? And what if you hit an innocent person?
Hmm.
So that's another theme that I've tried to explore. Some of the books that I haven't even published is I think not to be preachy, but as a country, sometimes you have to think about, well, we're the good guys. Okay, we're the good
Mm.
guys. Are we the
Mm.
good guys if we bomb a convoy and with a drone and we find out,
Hmm.
a couple hours later that was a wedding convoy. The terrorists
Yeah.
weren't anything, and we just killed 150 people going to a wedding. That's where I think you have to kind of assess what your priorities are and are you going at things the right way and is your mission just? Because, and I've said this from other podcasts, if Mexico started sending drones over, and my kids don't live with me half the time, if a drone came, God forbid, and bombed my ex-wife's house and killed her and my two kids, I wouldn't be like, yeah, Mexico, you screwed up. I'll give
Hmm.
you the benefit of the doubt. No, there's a good chance I'm going to get my guns and I'm going to Mexico and I'm probably going to try to whack some military people that killed my family.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that's where I try to write very enjoyable, fun,
Hmm.
thought-provoking stuff. But at the same time, there are sometimes messages put in there of like, maybe we should think about what we're doing. And we're not always the good guys. We want to be the
Hmm.
good guys, but if you look at our track record, not necessarily the case.
No. And I think that part of what makes characters more real is I can't remember if this was Tolkien or not. I'm not I My wife wants me to love the Lord of the Rings series. I couldn't make it past the second like long song in the Fellowship of the Ring. I'm like, Andy Serkis has an amazing narration, but I really have zero interest in him
That's
singing in this
hilarious.
audiobook. But I think it was Tolkien that made the point that what makes a coherent world is that there's some structure of belief to a certain
Yeah.
extent. And
Yes.
I think, doesn't matter if it's fantasy or if it's our reality. The
Right.
reality is people will choose to believe something in some way, shape, or form, even if they decide that they don't believe in anything, that's a choice of belief.
I was just going to say that if you're an atheist and you believe there is no God, there is no afterlife, you're still believing in something.
Hmm.
You're believing that you're here and at some point you're going to not be here and you're going to cease
Hmm.
to exist. The struggle I have with that, and I know people that feel that way, and again, I love those people. I don't go, well, I don't believe that and you're wrong. No, maybe they are right. I don't believe they are. But the mindset on that I struggle with was if I'd had that. Okay, I don't believe in
Hmm.
a God. I don't believe in an afterlife. I don't believe there's consequences for anything I do, except maybe prison or whatever.
Hmm.
Why would you not be out
Yeah.
doing everything you can to have just pleasure? What makes you
Hmm.
happy in life? And that's what some people do in life.
Hmm.
Screw everything else because there's no consequences. I can go rape, murder, and steal and do whatever.
Hmm.
And guess what? I'm not going to be judged for it. That's where I kind of go, really? Okay, so then why do you live within a moral code? And where did that moral code develop that we have? Was that a faith-based for someone at some point? Was that, the law, I don't know. It creates a lot of good questions. So those are kind of things that I do like to build in books because I don't want to just write something that pure entertainment and people go, oh, that was a fun read. I want some people to be like, catch something and be like, that makes me think. Or you picked out something, and this is more on the shallow side, but you picked out where I had good Seinfeld reference, and you were the first one
Yes.
actually to pick out the Seinfeld reference.
Yes.
I love the Easter eggs, and most of the Easter eggs I never hear a word about, and some of them I wonder about, like, did anyone pick up on that? I didn't get an email or a text from a friend or a fellow writer, and that's okay because they're in
Mhm.
there more for me, I guess, than anyone. But it's nice to hear that someone picked up on, oh, you used some Seinfeld real and fake in character names. So,
I was so happy when I'm staring at the ebook and I'm like, wait a minute. I see the name and I'm like, I can't let this go. Sometimes I see something, I'm like, it's just me. It's because I've read so much stuff. I'm always putting more into the thing. I'm like, I took a picture of it and sent it to you. I'm like, is this a Seinfeld reference? Because
Loved
you
it.
also reference Seinfeld in earlier in the book too. Like you make a
Right.
direct reference with the characters, which again makes the characters in the story more believable.
Yeah.
I think that it's a delicate balance in today's marketplace because in the post Marvel world, I'll say everything has to be meta, everything has to reference each other, is kind
Right.
of the attitude that tends to get made. Everything has to be self-referential. We have to say Star Wars, unless otherwise Disney doesn't pay us. But
Right. Exactly.
I think that having those cultural touchstones really does make a story and characters more believable. There's a series Raymond Benson, he wrote some of the Bond continuation novels. He did
Hmm.
his own thriller mystery series that's like this very unique genre bend called
Okay.
The Black Stiletto. Highly recommend it. But the part of the thing is this character is like set in the 1950s, 60s. One of the things that this woman does as she's writing in her diary, as she's doing these adventures as like a vigilante, is this is the song that came out from Elvis. This is
Hmm.
the movie that was just showed in the theater, and I
Hmm.
thought was super cool. Obviously,
Yeah.
these are things that Raymond Benson, who grew up around then, enjoyed and liked, but also
Right.
they make the world and the characters more believable because, yeah, if you were a kid in the 60s and the latest Elvis track dropped, you were like, this is the
Yep.
bomb.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it gives you a way of connecting with your readers versus if everything in your book is made up. It's kind of like why I use, um, at times I'll give cameos and stuff. And I've given
Hmm.
more than I should in some books and less in probably future books. But the joy someone finds of finding their name in a book is normally palpable. I
Hmm.
know it is for me. I was in a book long before I published a book. I was a cameo, very one line, one character reference. Not a big selling book or anything, but I got a copy of it, and I'm like, I'm in pop culture, baby. This is cool. And, so when I'm writing, I try to put that in. And I'm a child. I grew up, born in 76,
Hmm.
80s. I have lots of memories in the 80s, you know, watching The Fall Guy. I literally went out the other day. I was looking for collections, and I have something to say
Yes.
about the collections, but I bought
Yes.
the Airwolf collection. I was
Ooh,
like, I
uh-huh.
haven't seen Airwolf in like 25 years.
Hmm.
It's still unopened, so I might
Hmm.
bust into it tonight or tomorrow night. But I thought of you because I was walking through, of all places, the worst place in the world, Wally World, Walmart. But mine's actually nice in my town, so I'll go there
Hmm.
once every couple of weeks to get toiletries, and I'll always go through the DVDs, see if
Yeah.
something's on sale or cheap. I didn't pick it up yet because I was priced it at Amazon, and I'm battling which one to get it from. Is they have the complete James Bond collection, and I thought of you. I thought
Yes.
Terrence would be
Yes.
proud if I bought the whole James.
I
I think it's
would
like
be.
67 bucks or something, and I'm like, I don't know. Should I get that now? Should I wait till the end of the month? Should I?
Just
So
for
I'm
the digital
still,
copy versions alone, it is so worth it.
yeah,
Because the Blu-ray remaster, so I know that won't surprise you, I have that collection. It's
I'm sure.
it's fantastic. Like the way that they have these are movies that came out in the 60s
Oh
and
yeah,
the
long
upscale
time ago.
on them
Yeah.
on the Blu-ray quality is amazing.
Oh, no,
Highly
okay.
recommend.
Highly recommend. Okay, good. I think that probably seals the deal that I'll when I don't have ice on the roads, I'll have to
Yeah.
go out. I
Okay,
might
so
stay home today. Today's a writing day, I think, because it's like I don't need to wreck my car to go to Walmart to buy James Bond. So order it from
your
Amazon.
mission,
Let
your
the Amazon
mission.
guys fly down the hill. So,
Yeah. So I'm curious, since you are a child of the 80s, what did you think of the new Fall Guy movie? Did you see it?
I did. I went to the theater and saw it, and I had very high expectations. And as I was watching it, I was slightly, fairly disappointed,
Oh,
but it grew on me
hmm.
after. As I
Have you
kind
seen
of,
the extended version yet?
no, I've not seen the extended version.
It's better. Like
It's
I
better.
enjoy the regular version. I
Okay.
enjoyed the regular cut, but the extended version is legitimately a better movie. So if you get
Okay.
a chance,
I'll have to do that at some, but maybe I'll get it from watch it with my son or whatever with the extended version. So,
hmm.
yeah, the Fall Guy. Like I have a reference to the Fall Guy in Breach of Trust. There's a lot of A-Team references in several of the books because A-Team, like in
Yeah, I
college,
noticed that, and you have it in Babylon Will Rise too,
I
comparing each of the
know, and I
characters. I
know
was
some
like,
people are like,
yes.
dude, you've already made this joke, and it's like, yeah, but it's an important part, and it's a different series. So people that read the Omega Group series might not read the
Hmm.
Body Man series. So when we were in college, there was a group of us in the dorms that had adjoining rooms near each other, and we formed the A team. So we had a BA, we
Which
had a
one were
fake.
you?
I was Hannibal, baby.
Yes.
Someone's gotta run this, someone's gotta make it look good, and run this joint and smoke a cigar and so yeah, I was the ringleader. So and I still get so these are guys that I'm dating myself here. I graduated in 99. I still every so often get a text or direct message and be like, "Hey Hannibal," and I'll be like, it makes my day. I'm kind of like, yes, yes. I don't know what I've got out of life. I've got two kids, a finance job, and some books, but I'm also Hannibal. It's like maybe that's number one on the list. That's a
Mhm.
joke. So, but it brings me some joy. So, one of the guys uh, actually in Babylon Will Rise, Mickey Messick is the pilot. Uh, that is Face from that. So I actually messaged
Ah.
him and said, "Hey, Face, you're finally making a book. I needed to fly everyone around, and I decided to make you the pilot in Babylon Will Rise." So those are the fun like cameos
Hmm.
that no one will know who these people
Yeah.
are. The name looks like a made up name. No, they might be someone I actually went to college with, or
Hmm.
a friend of a friend, or someone that's in the universe. Because I hate to say you've got 30 characters in a book, even minor
Hmm.
characters just show up for a paragraph or whatever. I hate to make up 30 names. So
Yeah,
why not
true.
use some real names that might bring joy to someone?
Hmm.
And it's just fun sometimes to kill your friends. So
Narrative therapy. That's what it
yes,
is.
absolutely.
I
I've
also
already I've already got one in the next book, and I reached out and said, "Hey, do you mind if I put you in?" It's not a friend, someone I know from the internet, and someone's been supportive of my books, or not a friend in the sense of meeting and all that. She was quite excited. I was like, "You're gonna die," so no, I was like, "Okay, it's already done, written. She's dead, and she'll see it here in sometime this summer."
That's exciting. I also think that it's really smart of you as a publisher from that angle to have the two different series because, like you said, just because someone gets the Body Man doesn't necessarily mean they'd be the Omega Group. If they get the Omega Group, doesn't necessarily mean they get the Body Man. So you've
Right.
expanded your market reach
Yeah,
just that
no.
much more.
Well, and the other thing I've tried to do too, and it's very much a planned, even though I'm a pantser, it's very much a planned idea, was I didn't come out with either series. I
Hmm.
didn't want to have a series that you'd have the one protagonist that carried the book. And yeah, there's other, helpers
Hmm.
and there's other people that come in and out. But, I didn't want to write, like I said earlier, a Mitch Rapp character where
Yeah.
if Mitch Rapp's in the first chapter, he has to be in the last chapter because,
Hmm.
the Vince Flynn, family has a book contract with, who was it, Atria, I guess. He's got to live. You can't kill
Hmm.
him. So I intentionally went in the Body Man. I wanted it to be a role, not necessarily a person.
Hmm.
So, and actually the Supreme Justice, which is the next book, features the Body Man. It's a third book, even though it's Merci is very heavily. It's kind of more her story, but also the Body Man's in it as well. And there's other Body Man type characters from those books. The fourth Body Man book, which will come out in 2026, the old body men, people that have retired are starting to come into the mix. So I had to figure out, I've been figuring out
Hmm.
that the last 6 months of who are these people? When did they serve? I actually have a spreadsheet of the real presidents of the United States,
Hmm.
when they served, and who the fake body man was for each of them, and the apprentice. And it's
Hmm.
all tied in like years and when it
Hmm.
overlaps so that when I'm writing it in the next year,
Hmm.
I can get the details right of who this guy is, who that guy is, who replaced them. I needed the Bible because I was going to
Yeah.
mess up all the names. And so yeah, but the reason I say that and the way I bring that up is I wanted to have a series where I can maybe one day kill my protagonist.
Yeah.
And people might not like that, but it's not just that one protagonist that carries the books. So that's
Hmm.
why I like to have some of the minor characters maybe in one of the books play a bigger role. And maybe a
Hmm.
new character comes in and plays a big role. Because I kind of had that with the
Hmm.
first one, Body Man. You had Eli and Kat that did a lot of the heavy lifting. And I got complaints for that. People said, well, why isn't the Body Man in like every chapter? And it's like, well, because he's in an oil platform in the Gulf of Mexico being tortured.
Yeah.
If I go every chapter and go, and they put the screwdriver up his fingernail and jammed it, like
Yeah.
that's gonna annoy people. So that story was about finding the Body Man. Who is this
He's more of
character?
the MacGuffin at that point. Yeah.
Correct. In the second book, he plays a much bigger role, but I bring in
Hmm.
supporting. I bring in, Luke Fury, and I bring
Hmm.
in his twin brother, and Talia, and I bring in these other people. So to me, and again, it might not resonate with all the readers out there. I like the ensemble. I like the
Hmm.
supporting cast to
Hmm.
have almost as much of a say as the main protagonist.
It's like a good television show like The Wire or
Mhm.
NCIS, where you do have this ensemble teams and
Right.
characters. So that way you can constantly, like, I remember I never watched it because I'm a big enough fan of the original movies, talk about the 80s, Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
When they did the Lethal Weapon show, apparently,
Mhm.
like, the actor that played Riggs was problematic, so he got written out. They killed off Riggs and
Kill
created
Love Riggs.
a new character to fill that role in the Lethal
Wow.
Weapon TV
I didn't
show.
know that. Okay.
Yeah, so like there's I haven't like season two. The
Yeah.
being
Interesting.
able to create many characters that can do various parts of the story, it makes it more interesting. Like The
Yeah.
Mummy, love that movie. Rick O'Connell is obviously like the center piece of that film, but it really works because you have the ensemble cast.
Yeah. Well, as you say that, and I honestly, until we're having this conversation, I hadn't really thought about it. That's probably why I write this way, is I gravitate towards like the Seinfelds and the
Mm-hmm.
A-teams. They're
Mm-hmm.
not just the lone hero going
Mm-hmm.
out there and saving the day. There's a lot of times at least four people. Those four,
Mm-hmm.
without one of those four, it
Mm-hmm.
fails. So you have to have this ensemble. Because again, I didn't want the body. And same thing with Troy's World. Troy is an amazing character. He has some standalone books, but those standalone that haven't been published that I wrote years ago, those standalone books, he has other people helping him do the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's not Superman that's like I said before, jumping out
Mm-hmm.
of the plane and getting shot and getting stabbed and oh, but he can drive this car like, like Richard Petty. We don't want to say Dale Earnhardt, but Richard Petty, So it's just like, yeah, I enjoy writing those stuff. And I hope readers, and I've gotten great feedback, so I think they do.
Mm-hmm.
But and I say this not in a, condescending or a mean way or whatever, but at the end of the day, the stories I write are what I want to read.
Yes.
So when I get
Mm-hmm.
done with that book and I type the end, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm pleased with how it turned out, then that was the biggest checkpoint to get to. Now, do I
Mm-hmm.
want readers to read the books and be like, man, this is really good or whatever? Absolutely. I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
and those praise mean something to me. It doesn't, I don't go, I don't care. I liked it. It doesn't matter if you like it. No, I love to hear people like it. At the end of the day, I want to write a story that I want to read. And when I
Yes.
go back and read it the first time and start doing edits and I start laughing as I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
'cause some of these stories I've written over the course of 3 or 4 years just because of life and getting
Mm-hmm.
losing the publishing contract or the publisher going out of business and contract getting canceled and all this other stuff. Um, it's like because there's such a long time frame, I'll sometimes be editing a chapter that I wrote in 2018 and it's
Mm-hmm.
2022. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, I don't even remember writing that. That's brilliant. Or sometimes I read it and I go,
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember writing that. That's complete crap. I've got to drop this chapter. Wait, there's another Sam? I have that in the other series. I can't have two Sams. Okay, I got to figure out. It becomes Charlie. So that's where it bites you in the butt a little bit of writing over a long period. But um the other thing that's cool and that I've kind of adapted and learned to do is I can put something down and pick
Mm-hmm.
it up 6 months later and not
Mm-hmm.
have to go reread the entire book. I can kind of start again, maybe read a
That's
chapter
great.
back and go, oh, this is where we were going. Ah, this is where we go next. So I'm very grateful for that um, ability to be able to do that. Currently, I'm getting older, so that might at some point I might have to be Kyle Mills and do a 40,000 word outline because I can't remember my character name and not because he doesn't can't remember his character name. He just that's how he does it. I might need that at some point, but for now we're still going to try to pants it as much as possible and hopefully put out a good book.
Well, you're continuing to put out good books. I'm excited for what you've got coming up next. Tell us
Thank you.
what's in the background right now. You said Supreme Justice?
Supreme Justice will be out this summer. So that originally it was going to be a Mercy Deata is my female assassin from The Body Man and Breach of
Mm-hmm.
Trust, and she has a very small role, and she's one of the characters that I got a lot of feedback from people over the years saying she needs a book.
I was gonna
And
say
I
I
thought
thought that you
let's
were working on one for her.
Yeah, and I thought let's give her a series, and that's originally
Mm-hmm.
my intent. All this end of 2024, and as kind of I got towards the end of the year, and I was writing more, I was kept wanting to pull the Body Man more into the story, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, what if I just make this the third Body Man? Because I'm getting
Yeah.
so much feedback and so many
Mm-hmm.
sales from the first two Body Man series.
Awesome. Congrats.
Publisher standpoint, thank you. It makes sense to have a third book out
Mm-hmm.
2025 versus what I was planning for 2026.
Yeah.
But I'm able to blend it in where again, she's a big role, but the body man has a very large role as well. So the quick synopsis on this one is that first chapter, and I'll give away, it's on my website and a few other places. First chapter of the book, husband of Supreme Court justice gets whacked by Mercy de Ata. Why did she kill him? What's going on? Well, there's a big case coming to
Hmm.
the Supreme Court. Four justices are on one side, four justices on the other side. You got one justice in the middle, won't show her hands. So powers that be decides we're going to force your hand the direction we want. And that causes all kinds of turmoil. The body man gets tied in, and do Mercy and the body man see eye to eye? And are they able to maybe work together, or do they have to like go after each other? And Supreme Justice is a roller coaster. So
I'm excited. Obviously, we'll have to have you back on the show when it's out, but
love to.
I'm looking forward to it. Eric, this is always a pleasure and a blast to
Thank
chat
you.
with you.
I appreciate it.
Where can people go learn more about you and your work?
So if they want
There it
Babylon
is.
Rise, they can go Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a
Hmm.
Million, anywhere
Hmm.
online. I've
Are you
actually, if they
selling them
want,
off your own site too?
yeah, so I just started that last week. So if they want signed copies, they can go to my website, Eric P. Remember that stands for Paul, ericpbishop.com. And if they do actually buy it from me, might be like $2 more than Amazon. I try to keep it close to Amazon price. I
Hmm.
just have to ship it, so that's the price difference.
Yeah,
I'm actually taking a unique chapter from Supreme Justice and printing it off and sending it with the Babylon Rise copy.
cool.
So. Well, if I get enough requests, I'll have to start sending the same chapter to a few people. But the goal is send a unique chapter. It's not edited fully. It
Hmm.
might have some gibberish in there that people are like, what is he saying? But I sign them. I give a little note of what I was thinking on that chapter, and I stuff it in the book. And just as a thank you for buying the books. So they are available.
That's really cool. And we will link all of that in the show notes along with the Tale of Two Scribes. Eric,
Yeah.
thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Terrence. I appreciate it.